Hey all, again, Juneteenth 2020. So this is the second part of my video um, addressing, the conspiracy that I'm calling a conspiracy to destroy the American dream, by the elite of this world, the Earthlings. I don't want to call them of our country because, they're multinational at this point. Um, First of all, like the American dream, like what is it? Like the American dream is that regardless of where you were born, um, what family you were born into, you can reach like become successful, whatever version of your success is, if you work hard, if you willing to sacrifice, take some chances, you can actually reach those dreams. And then, and of course, it shouldn't be about just because you were born into the right family or that you got friends at higher places mean it's going to determine whether you were successful or not. So that's the idea, is that you could come here and become whatever you want to become if you're willing to work for it. Now, of course, even with the plantation owners back in the day, the colonizers, they come over um, from Europe, and they had this, of course it was enticing to them that they can sit here and become something more, but they had plenty of experience, having to deal with like royal families over there in Europe. So they already had a clear understanding of what elitism was. And so now we introduce slaves into the mix. Now we can actually, you know, have people working for us, without us actually having to get out there and do anything. Well, we take the work hard part out of it and still, have a large, good amount of success. And, having that experience being subjects to queens and kings, it probably was very enticing to now have your own subjects that have to do what you say. Except that now it's a little bit more than subjects, because now they're property. They're your property that you can do with it what you please. So, it all they had to do basically is sit back and eat, and then just play politics to a large extent. Basically, implement some policies that will kind of make people dependent on you, and at the same time divide them. So what do? They basically make sure that they can't educate themselves, so they can't really get a sense of self. They don't know their heritage. They lose them, they break them up, so they don't know their history. And you have corrupt uh, priests and coming in, and or preachers coming in and speaking, teaching them the Bible, that's teaching them that because they have darker skin, that they're supposed to be punished by God's will, stuff like that. Just again, that current day brainwashing. Only give them information that we want them to know. Don't let them learn anything different. Don't let them form a sense of self. And then you introduce division when you start to have overseers, or start to give perks to slaves that are willing to tell on other slaves, to make their situation slightly better. um, and and that's really the formula to kind of keep their power in place. And what we know, from people just in general, is like, how many people do you know that are actually willing to give away something of value for nothing, simply because it's the right thing to do? Like, there's not many. I feel like I would be one, because I try to be fair. Mirror, mirror on the wall, I'm the fairest of them all. That's one of my little things I like to say. Um, but most people won't, and I know that, and you know that. So it's kind of like they're going to fight to keep what they got, whether they deserve to have it or not. Um, so what happened? Basically, uh, Abraham Lincoln and a group of Northern Americans, they were against slavery. They, had the Underground Railroad and all this other stuff, so they've been trying to fight it for a while. But now they're like, okay, well, we want to actually abolish it because, again, their moral, code, they felt bad. They felt like this wasn't what, the Constitution represented. So they created the Republican Party and actually, was able to win. But because the Democrats already knew what they stood for, they immediately said, they won. Well, you know what? We're just going to take our states and separate from the Union and create the Confederacy. So that's what the Civil War was about. Abraham Lincoln, of course, didn't want to fight it, and I guess he gets criticized because he didn't want to fight in a war that led to thousands of people dying. It's not something to really criticize. It just is what it is. Like, he didn't want to fight in it, but he ended up still fighting, and a lot of people died. A lot of these Northern Republican, their great-great-grandfathers who didn't have money, who may have never owned slaves, died fighting to free slaves. Understand that, you know what I'm saying? That's, again, going back to what my previous video about, just like the brainwashing in place. The Republicans end up winning. Emancipation Proclamation ended up freeing the slaves, but of course, you have some hard feelings, some bad feelings, and it's logical that at one point you were considered their property, so now they have to, Southerners that lost this fight and had a lot of people die in the process. They feel some type of way about now having to look at this black person as a human being, and so they basically said, stay away from us. We gotta basically recognize you be in your own part. And there's some stories out there about them knocking on doors and still going after black women because they never really got over that, even though they want to try to consider them not human and stuff like that. Still love the black people. But anyway, of course, in reaction to this, you're going to have people that say, like, okay, if you don't want to be around me, if you hate me so much, then I just won't be around you. So, blacks did, to kind of stay away. In that time, it probably wasn't so much animosity, so much in hatred back, as much as it was just, like, okay, well, we got an opportunity to survive. Let's see what we can do. And it forced black people to be very creative, because, again, they don't have the African history, heritage to kind of lean on. They don't have their European, history to lean on. So now they basically have to kind of make up their own thing. And you saw the creativity come out in the music, mainly, but there's, they were able to educate themselves, become doctors, lawyers, teachers, run their own schools. And so that means, and we saw that in the Tulsa, Oklahoma, that's becoming, real, newsworthy, real popular as of late. It was a good social experiment. It showed, what blacks could do, if given the opportunity. And they prospered. The issue, was that, they were still surrounded by, poor Southern, white people that, probably had a bit of a jealousy as well, when it came to how they, these people were doing better. And so something as simple as a teenage boy stumbling or stepping on the foot of an elevator operator, a white woman, and her screaming, got him arrested, led to a group of black men coming to the courthouse to make sure that ain't nobody try to do no lynching on a boy. And then they got confronted by a whole lot more, white men, that want to like escalate this into something because there was a lot of tension, again, probably jealousy and everything else. So this whole thing blows up, and then suddenly they got a white mob that, is going through this Black Wall Street and, killing several hundred people, up to 1, 2, 300 people, and displacing, burning down the homes of like 8,000 people. So again, the within that place, right, there was segregation, but the blacks were allowed to, sort of do the American dream, like, hey, we could build our own, and they were able to kind of go up, you know, build that area up. But I mean, I think even though those elite may have been okay with the segregation part, they don't think they liked the fact that they were succeeding, and they probably incited a lot of what happened during that time. And so, you had that, and of course that sort of like leads off into like, what the Black Panthers were about. They bought into the segregation too, but of course this was more of a combative type of thing. Like, you hate us, you want to kill us, we'll kill you. You fight us, we'll fight you. So yeah, let's separate. But we don't, we hate you. We don't want nothing to do with you. This is not what the American dream is really supposed to be about. Like, it's not, uh, like, it's supposed to be a melting pot where people come from different places and are sort of like all working to like make this country the best. This country's never going to be great if you don't try to help the weakest link. You know what I'm saying? If you don't try to make a certain people, in this case like Black people, succeed, then they're going to be a draw on resources. So when they had the opportunity, they've proven that we can. Well, I say we that we can actually be productive. That we can actually, add to our economy. But again, you have those that still viewed us as less than human and wanted to, sort of bring us down, didn't want that sort of success. That wasn't the game plan. Coming into, the 60s, then you got Martin Luther King. Again, he's not playing the checkers. He's not getting pulled into checkers like the Black Panthers. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it chess versus checkers. He's playing chess. See, he understands that, just like they did with this Tulsa, Oklahoma, like, it was only recently that they said in like 2018 that they actually looked into the actual story and redid the numbers, because basically the newspaper took it out of their volumes. Like, they basically tried to hide it. Again, the media not working for Black people, not trying to tell the truth. They basically tried to cover up what happened there. You know what I mean? On whose behalf? Probably the rich people, the rich Democrats, the rich slave owners. We don't want people over there trying to come and support, these people, or we want that story gone, because there's no way to make that look good. So he's not trying to play this whole, yeah, I can win this battle. Let's, Black Panther thing. Let's, like, they come and hit us, we fight them, because he knows what the media is going to do. It was evidence of it even back then. If all of a sudden the cameras are rolling and you see a Black person, beating up the white guy, and nobody's going to sit there and tell the truth that, oh, the white guy came over and started the fight. They can spin this any way they want to. So when he does his protest, it's basically he was very select about who he was going to add, because again, it's not that I'm scared of you, but I'm actually trying to fight for cause. I'm sacrificing. I'm going to take these lumps, but I'm only going to take them if it's going to make a difference. I want, when these videos show that we're, yes, going against the Jim Crow laws, Yeah, we're going against the law, but these are the unjust laws. I saw this. Everybody keep trying to make me read this Michael Harriot text, and everybody got it wrong about Martin Luther King. Like, no, this guy basically went way off his point. He said that Martin Luther King uh, was about civil disobedience by reading his Birmingham letter, but then in the letter he says he's all about obeying just laws. He would the reason is that he's saying showing civil disobedience, taking direct action against unjust laws. Trying to compare that to looting and burning down buildings is incorrect. It makes no sense. You know what I mean? Like, he's nowhere did the guy explain how Martin Luther King thought that would be okay. You know, he went from that to basically lead into like some Black Panther, people that was about busting heads back. You know what I mean? Like, that's nonsense. Let's get that thing out of it, because again, I'm gonna be the filter of noise, and that's noise that he was throwing at you. Yes, Martin Luther King about civil disobedience, about directly taking action against unjust laws, Jim Crow laws, laws that did not line up with what the federal law was. Okay, that's what he was doing. Sitting in at department stores, restaurants that didn't allow Black people to sit there. You know, those are the things that he was doing. But again, it's this idea of chess. Like, he knows that what the American dream is supposed to be. It was part of his "I Have a Dream" speech. He wants people to be judged on their character, not the color of their skin. Like, this is the American dream. Like, no matter who you are, where you came from, you should be able to work hard and reach your goals, and not have the discrimination and things that they had to face back then. And now, I mean, again, it still kind of goes on. Obviously it was a little bit different back then. So anyway, like, to appease him, like with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, it puts in that you can't discriminate based off of jobs. But now we're getting into like this whole idea of implementation versus reinforcement. I mean, you can put in laws all the time. Like I was discussing on the previous video, like with the police. It's like you know they put in laws to stop and frisk you. Like, now people get bothered because they don't do it to other people. Like, so why put that law in unless you're trying to allow them to abuse this power. But at the same time, like, just putting a law in doesn't mean that people are actually going to do it. Or going to do anything to enforce it. I mean, me personally, I've had an experience in the last few years where I, had a issue with my wage, and I went to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to try to file a complaint, based on for the discrimination thing. And basically they come back and say, well, you got any evidence? You got to have evidence, because we can't go looking for stuff. I'm like, well, what kind of evidence can I get? Like, you want me to break into HR and steal somebody else's files, something that could get me like locked up? Like, that doesn't, so what good are you? What good are you to me? Like, I have to basically do it on my own. I have to get a lawyer. I don't know if I can win something or not. Like, I got to risk spending more money trying to fight something. Like, what good are you to me? So what's the enforcement of this rule? And see, this is where, you say, people say that, okay, you got the Civil Rights Act and this is what, helped he helped kind of get. But, then you have those that say, like, but things still didn't get better, because who's making sure that's being implemented? That's being enforced correctly. What are those? So again, I bring that out this because it's like things are being thrown at people sometimes. Like, the bones are being thrown, and and this could have been one that was thrown at him. I mean, in 1968, they had came out and did the Civil Rights Act of 1968 with the day that he was killed. Martin Luther King was killed, because and that was supposed to go against housing discrimination. But again, these are things that was oh, he died, that barely passed. But they're like, okay, well, we got to stop these riots now. Let's give them something, give them a bone. Here you go. But again, is it really stopping the discrimination? All they really got to do is just not have evidence that they discriminated. And if you're not going to really punish people, then it's not really changing behavior. So you got to be careful with all of these legislation things. Oh, look at what the changes we like. Are people enforcing them? How are they being enforced? How are these what are the oversight? Are they setting up oversight committees? Like, are they doing things to make sure that it's actually taking effect? And of course, like I kind of got into this thing about whether he got killed by James Earl Ray, who again said after the fact that he admitted to it, but now he's saying he didn't do it. And it been kind of crazy that this guy who shouldn't at that time been able to really know where Martin Luther King was staying, knows where he's staying, setting up in the building across the way to take a shot from a distance, and all of this. Like, this is again, because conspiracy. I think that the government to kill Martin Luther King, particularly the Democratic Party, on behalf. But I don't want to get into the party thing because both parties have now been infiltrated with people that's being paid off, in my opinion. I did think it was interesting that Nixon, ended the war. He became president in 1969. He ended the Vietnam War. Again, this used to be a friend of Martin Luther King. And basically he goes down, as like the most disgraced president ever. And why? Is because he was basically trying to spy on the Democrats, wiretapping and stuff like that. Because a lot of Republicans think Democrats are like terrorists in a sense. Like, so this is really what he went down for, and what and it kind of, when you think about it, yeah, Nixon disgraceful president, blah blah blah, but he almost was impeached and all of that. But it's like, what did he do? He just got caught by the people that he think are like the rich and the elite that are trying to plan to destroy America in a sense. So I mean, that's even interesting to kind of think about. But anyway, like in recent years, like, this hasn't really changed. Like, politicians, many of their party, like, they pacify the lower class with legislation that sounds good, but doesn't really fix the issues that we have. You know what I mean? We talk about all of the money being put into the schools. Everything, like, you got the sugar tax and all of this stuff, but it's like, I mean, I was sitting here looking at, I had to watch Fox News because all the other news stations don't want to talk about anything, actually relevant to the things that's going on, the issues that we're facing. But they're actually discussing how, like, in these democratic cities, there's almost $16,000 to $17,000 being paid per child. Now we talk about private schools, say, oh, they charge $20,000, but they saying that public schools get paid almost $16,000 to $17,000 per child. Do you see $16,000, $17,000 worth of public education? Like, we're always sitting here assuming that because they obviously some of us know that they're misusing funds and stuff like that. But 16, 17,000, like, there's no excuse that they shouldn't be doing much better. Like, public schools are doing the worst in the country. Worst in the country. With that type of money, and those other places aren't even getting that type of money into their schools. So, this is something that is kind of being pointed out, regularly about the Democratic Party. Yes, they they give us things. They seem like they're working for us. But see, you got to understand how these short-term benefits having long-term negative effects on us. Like, again, going into like the taxes and stuff like that. Yes, like they give all of these tax breaks to big corporations. They give well, actually, they don't give tax breaks to those that stay in this country. The other bigger agencies are just taking our jobs overseas, and then they bring it back and don't get penalized for it. So really, it puts the jobs the businesses that stay here at an unfair advantage, which is why you even though they're trying to talk about like being a small business, like protecting small business, you're not really protecting small businesses when they have to sort of like lose their suppliers, or they can only count on one supplier that's coming from overseas. Everybody's depending on stuff that's coming over from China because that's the only way they can make things affordable enough to compete. You get what I'm saying? So it's like you're actually hurting small businesses, but this is how they got us gassed up. But on top of they got these tax loopholes that are in place, but because they're there, like we always talk about the middle class getting hit. Now Republicans just want to get rid of taxes. They want small government, whatever. But Democrats always kind of talking about this this they raise taxes, but it's always the middle class that's kind of getting hit because what happens is the people on the lower end they get these tax refunds, these large tax refunds, which you can't blame them. Like a lot of times you have to make decisions like, okay, do I work 20 more hours a week and only make 5,000 more, or do I don't work and then get the extra $5,000 back on my taxes anyway? You know what I'm saying? These are the decisions. Like, why do work when you could get it for free? You know what I mean? Like, so they're not motivated. Like the things that are in place is actually making people lazy. It's not that they're not willing to work for it, but they have to make decisions that's like, okay, like if I make too much more money, I can't qualify for childcare, stuff like this. Like, whereas like you can really just raise who's eligible for childcare, like raise the income limits so that somebody that's like 40,000 doesn't suddenly disqualify from everything, when that's really not enough to afford. Like where they now in a situation where they can't afford stuff that people that are choosing not to work as much is getting things that they can't afford. You know what I mean? Again, it's pacifying people. It's saying like things are out, but there's also taking away that creativity that Black people have, that we can sort of come up with different art styles, music styles and everything else. I don't want to just keep talking about that, but other business types, because it's like there's no push to do it. It's the same sort of idea that I talked about in the beginning with the slave owners. Again, make them dependent, make sure that they're not educated. Like, okay, our schools are failing us and nobody's trying to fix it. And then again with this whole get them to turn on each other, it's not only about race. I mean, race is just one thing. I mean, we could get into sex. I mean, sexual orientation, like black men. I mean, like how we're treated by the court system. You know what I mean? In general, like it's not. You're messing up the whole dynamic. You don't want our family sources. You don't want them to work. You want us to be sitting here fighting at each other all the time. You know what I mean? But see, like what needs to happen, and it's kind of hard, is that you like depending on people to say like, all right, take short-term sacrifice short-term in order to like make the long. But that's our decision. Like, we're currently at like a precipice, where if we don't really like wake up to like the collusion and stuff that's going on, between the politicians and the elite, then like our country is on a downward turn. It's been going down. The economy's been suffering. That's why China and everybody's caught up. At the sacrifice of our wealth, like we've been sharing it, with first the elite and then those other countries, because they're going to the other countries to open up their businesses and bring them back. So they're making money and those other countries are making money, and we're losing it. We're not producing anything. So our economy's been suffering, you know what I mean? And, but we get pacified with like I'm gonna be street smart, get all the book smart thing. Why work more? I'm gonna work smarter, not work harder type of thing. And And I get it. Like, you know what I'm saying? At one point I was on unemployment back in, the 2008, 2009 recession. And, there was a couple of jobs out there and I'm like, well, why would I take it? I'm actually getting more money on unemployment. Why would I work? It just happened now with this coronavirus. I mean, I think Trump kind of fell for the gas. I mean, he's been, making good money for a long time, so he didn't know how much extra $600 a week actually meant. But for a lot of people, they were making more money on unemployment than they're making, than they would be making, regularly. I mean, you're talking about $600 on top of what could be 300. You're talking about like $900 a week for some people. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, again, that's almost, $4 grand. Like, that's almost a 50,000, 40, 47, $48,000 salary. Like, come on. Like, these are the things that are kind of like in place, and it makes, and then what happens is nobody wants to, go back to work. Nobody wants to do anything, and it's all part of the game though. But this is the stuff that, yes, we can think that, like, okay, we're taking advantage of it in the short term, but when we realize that, like, okay, if we start to focus on the issue, focus on the people that's doing this and what their actual goal is, we'll see that we can't allow this to continue. Or else, when we actually do try to, you know decide, like, okay, well, things aren't as good because the funding, eventually, if we start to fall below some of these other countries and owe them money and all the debt that we have, like, we just won't be able to afford anymore the low income housing, won't be able to afford to do all of the food stamps and stuff like that. So now that's not there for you no more. Now you have to work, but now you're working in a place that's not as appealing anymore. Like, the country just isn't as appealing anymore, and people don't really want to be here no more. You get what I'm saying? So it's deep, but we gotta focus our attention on these people. I mean, they've shown their hand. I don't want to get into like the whole Democrat Republican thing. I'm just talking about being used, because now I've been seeing that people being used on both sides, but I always kind of, I'm kind of focusing on the Democrats since they actually were their party originally, and a lot of people don't always look at it that way. I know I did. So yeah, but anyway, I mean, that was kind of that's all I'm gonna get into at the moment. If you found it interesting, helpful, definitely share it, like it, subscribe. I'm gonna put this on YouTube, whatever. Like, maybe put it out there, because I'm trying to, clarify this for a lot of people, help people connect these dots, and try to, like, block out some of this noise and see, basically make a decision of what you want. Maybe you want this elite type of thing, this royalty, and you just want to get into it, and you starstruck. You know what I mean? If that's you, then make rational decisions. But if you're saying that this isn't what you want, then you have to start to take the steps towards that line up, that's rational, with lines up with the, if you want the American dream, that's what lines up. That's what Martin Luther King was fighting for. If that's not what you want, then you can continue on doing what you're doing. All right.